can. The Candyman can. The Candyman can because he mixes it with love and makes the world taste good.
Gentle angelic choir in the background.
And welcome back, folks. This is Cory.
This is Dave.
This is Scott. Praise Satan.
With the angelic choir.
Yes.
Oh, so we are back. We are still in the wild card round, and there are plenty more rounds to go. The last one got split up into 2 shows. Will this one? We don't know. It just depends on how long-winded we get.
It's like, will these fuckers ever shut up? I don't know. Find out by the end of the show and see if Cory split this into 2 episodes. Who knows?
It's just more of us to love.
Yes. That's what she said.
Oh, God. All right. Any announcements, any corrections, anything we need to mention?
Well, we were hoping to offend a lot of mothers today, but...
Yes,
it is Mother's Day.
On Mother's Day, which means by the time you hear it, it'll probably be June.
Yes.
Right.
But yes.
It'll be Father's Day.
If you're just now hearing this, Happy Mother's Day, Happy Father's Day, whatever the hell's going on right now.
Happy 4th of
Happy
July.
Hallmark holiday of your choice, yes.
Yes.
I think there's a moment in Private Parts where Howard Stern says that he always ends little promo announcements with Happy Holidays because there's always a fucking holiday somewhere.
You know what? That's probably a good move. Yeah.
Good point, yes.
Happy holiday. Which one?
Yeah, you
choose. I don't
So
care.
the one thing I will
Chinooka.
mention, Cory, we alluded to this at the beginning of last wild card show, or I guess the first wild card show. Now that it's been split into 2, but there were 2 episodes early on, episodes 4 and 5, when we first started doing this, where we decided to focus in, rather stupidly decided to focus in on artists that had 5 or more albums in the Rolling Stone Top 500.
God, yeah.
Because these wildcard shows were drawing from that list of the first 5 or 6 episodes, we did those shows where we've had multiple albums by the same artist, you're going to hear the same artist coming up over and over again. So when we get in today and you're like, Jesus Christ, why are they talking about Springsteen again? That's why. But again, we're doing this as a wild card. It doesn't necessarily mean every Springsteen album is going to make it through the process, but just so you know, that's why you're hearing some of these artists come up over and over again.
I know a lot of people are hearing this and they're like, fuck Bruce Springsteen, fuck him hard, throw him off a bridge, fuck him and throw him off a bridge while you're fucking him. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. So yeah.
Wait, they're also throwing themselves off the bridge with him?
Well, yeah, of course, you can fuck him on the way down. Yeah.
Just right at when you reach sort of climax, just
all the way to
get him off
Wait,
your
hold
cock
on,
and out over the bridge at that point.
Sodomy, murder, suicide. Is that how this works?
Yes. Sodomy, murder, suicide. That sounds like one of those, investigate.
That will be our next podcast, True Crime. Sodomy, murder, suicide, True Crime podcast.
Sit down, have a cookie.
Oh boy. How can you poison yourself while tied to a chair?
Okay, I think we're ready.
I think so.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's go into the first round. After striking oil with Led Zeppelin 4, Zeppelin returns 2 years later into the studio and comes out with another monster album, Houses of the Holy, with just about every last song getting heavy radio play then and still to this very day. In the other corner, the Rolling Stones album Aftermath, the first to feature all songs written by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, as they vie to differentiate themselves from the rest of the British invasion and make people notice that they are not just another British act covering American music. And who wants to kick us off?
Well, first I'll just mention, if you want to hear us talk about both of these albums, you can hear them both on to hear us talk more about both of these albums, go back and listen to season 1, episode 5. It's one of those shows I mentioned earlier with the multiple albums by the same artist. Don't go listen, actually. You don't have to, but if you're interested.
Sorry, Dave, Dave had a little seizure there. Yeah.
It's okay. We all have our moments.
Yes, everyone knows that I do.
All right, so let's start with Houses of the Holy.
Let's start with it.
Scott?
Oh, well, what is not to like about House of the Holy? Dire Maker, Over the Hills and Far Away, Dancing Days, fucking great singles on that album.
Really are.
the song, the title track. I mean,
This is, Zepp breaks through early on with basically heavy covers of old blues tunes. This is like the point where they're starting to experiment and find their own sound, where they're not just basically doing variations of covers.
Right. And I think I liked it even more than 4 because it was so different.
It was a more mature Zeppelin 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love some of the things they were trying out. Honestly, my favorite song on here that doesn't get a lot of radio play is "No Quarter," because it's kind of got that spacey sort of post Sid Barrett Floyd kind of vibe to it in some ways.
Right.
Just a note there too. No Quarter is a very old song that was actually recorded, I think, with the Byrds or the Yardbirds.
Really?
Oh.
Yes, really.
I'm gonna have to go check that out. I didn't realize.
There's a very early recording of Page.
It's one of those like that. That song is like such.
Was it No Quarter or was it? Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Oh God, maybe I am. Wow.
I'm having a hard time picturing the Yardbirds doing something like No Quarter.
Yeah,
me too. And
I think
and
it was
now-
Dazed
now
and
I think I'm on
Confused.
drugs.
Dazed and
a
Confused.
version.
There was
I think
definitely an earlier version. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Okay. I'm
Okay.
on No, I'm not on drugs today. Like lately ever. So wow. Anyway,
I mean, I got
that's not the
Sudafed
point.
pouring through my veins, but that's about it.
I've got a Zyrtec in mine, so maybe it's the energy drinks. I don't know. It looks like piss that I'm drinking, but it's not. I swear I'm not drinking piss today.
Today.
All right, there, Dr. Oz. You made him spit it up. Oh, look, he's got piss on his face. All over his glasses.
This is we always kid Scott about some of like the stuff he does, like thinking that you guys can see it because it's a podcast, and of course you can't. But God, sometimes I really wish this was a video podcast because Scott just did a literal spit take. And is now covered with his urine sample.
I mean, he did ice it. I'll give him that. It's not warm and bubbly.
God damn it.
Oh, you asked for iced tea.
Oh.
Yeah.
I heard something else.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, these things happen. Okay.
All right. Speaking of things that are inappropriate, let's talk about a couple of criticisms of this album. One of them being this album has gotten some criticism over the cover. It is a classic, iconic cover, but it is a classic, iconic cover that features naked children, and there are some folks that does not quite sit right with. Now, it doesn't really. Honestly, it's done in a way that it doesn't really bother me too much, but I do understand it's been a source of some criticism over the years.
I mean, Jimmy Page was dating the 16,
Well,
17
that actually,
year old.
when you put it through that lens, it actually does make it feel a little worse.
Yeah. I mean, it happened so long ago. There was no internet. There were no like tabloids like there are today.
These were the days when you bought an album and you took it home and you like looked at the cover while you were listening to it through your headphones. And you read the lyrics if there were lyrics included.
Yeah.
But mainly you got a whole experience. And I used to look at the album covers a lot because you could always, find different things or whatever, especially on, the metal and the rock and roll stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's part of why I mentioned it, because I do think when you're talking about what's the best album, I do think the album art is one factor of that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we lost that kind of artistry.
Yes, we did.
When we've gone back to singles and we moved away. Well, when we moved away from LPs. I mean, even the CDs, it was a smaller version, so you're reading a smaller print.
Yeah, well, I think we're gonna talk about streaming music a little bit later on, and it's definitely something that's gotten lost in the streaming era too.
Certainly.
Yes.
Another criticism of this album is it was this sort of experimental phase where they were trying out different sounds and didn't always work. I've heard people say this is the most unbalanced Zeppelin album because it's sort of all over the place sometimes, and in particular the grunge.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of like the grunge because it's so silly.
When I was listening to this again the other day, I actually realized that if you took the crunge and if I stripped all the vocals out so that you don't actually hear Robert Plant singing, I could convince you that it's a Red Hot Chili Pepper song. It's got sort of those funk elements and disco elements. And
well, I honestly, as far as an unbalanced album, I'd say In Through the Outdoor, but
no, that's
just me.
True.
Well, and I think some of that unbalancedness, if that's a word, it's because now the production is solely in the hands of Jimmy Page now. There's not a third party going, maybe you need to mix this up or use this song here or get it to balance that way. I mean, but after Led Zeppelin 4 and he produced that, who's gonna dispute him?
Yeah, that's true.
With that album. So
everything was through Swan Song at this point.
What's that?
Everything was through Swan Song Records at this point.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, Jimmy Page was the producer, so he was making the final say, and he probably wasn't taking any input from anybody else.
That's true. Maybe. I mean, he is a very good producer, though.
He is. The imbalance of this album, and they probably could have mixed them around a little differently, but you know what? Who's to say?
Well, listen, I mean, I don't actually think it's a bad thing when you have tracks that don't work, because it's... I would much rather have a band experiment and try new things and have it not always work than just say, okay, this is selling, so we're just going to keep making the same song over and over again.
Instead of sticking to the formula. No, you're right.
Right. No, I hate formulaic stuff because that's just... it might sound great for a few minutes, but then you come back to it and you're like, oh, God, what the fuck is this? Yeah.
Okay, I think we've covered that. So let's move on to the Rolling Stones' Aftermath.
Yeah. Dave? Well, sort of along the same lines. I mean, this is the album where the Stones are now starting to find their own sound, and as opposed to, as you said, Cory, not just doing covers of American music, but really starting to do all their own writing themselves and do things that are different than just 1950s, early 60s R&B songs,
Yes.
Got Paint It Black and Under My Thumb that just came out of this that were like, oh, this is what this band can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is back to this concept of experimentation. There's a pretty wide diversity of the instruments they were pulling in, the musical styles they were pulling in.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Brian Jones.
Yeah.
That was bringing in a lot of that. And I mean, you just mentioned Pink Floyd earlier and Syd Barrett, and Brian Jones was kind of the same way. I think the drugs ruined that artist as well.
Absolutely.
And his initials BJ.
True.
I'm just saying that probably helped ruin it.
I have no idea what you've said.
He's making a fellatio joke, or attempting to make a fellatio joke.
Well, that's what I thought. I was just trying to see how that worked in there.
And you're actually thinking, God,
joke in search of a punchline, basically.
Yes. Did I miss the setup?
It was more like a punchline in search of a joke, but it works either way, Dave. You can insert it in the front or the back.
We talked about this.
I didn't say it.
Poor Bruce Springsteen.
Yep.
He was born to run.
The thing about this album, though, is on the downside. They had not yet fully put it together yet. Like, I remember when we talked about these Stones albums on the Rolling Stone list before. One of the things we said was the Stones had this tendency to have like 2 or 3 great singles and then a lot of filler. And this is a perfect example of that. There's a lot of songs here that just, could take or leave it, honestly.
They had just figured out that they can write music together, and this is, they're pretty green at it. I mean, I'm not going to knock, like Paint It Black and Under My Thumb. I mean, they just
those are gems.
Rock those. Yeah.
Those are gems.
Yeah, and then there's this, like, the one thing I noted was Lady Jane, which I think is like almost all harpsichord and stuff. It sounded, I jotted down that it sounded like something a Ren Festival performer came up with after a handful of shrooms. Just not good. I mean, not exactly what you would call a radio-friendly single, I guess is the best way to say it.
And actually, I am waiting. You got to come forward to about 2007, 2008. Lindsey Buckingham does a cover of it. And it's really, really good.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Really? I'll need to hear that too.
It's on his Under the Skin album.
Buckingham might be a complete cocksnot, but damn, as a musician, he's really good. So
He's
All
incredibly
right,
good.
if we can find that, I'll try to throw that up on Twitter.
Okay.
all right, cool.
Overall, I mean, it's good. Don't get me wrong, but I forgot Mother's Little Helper's on here too.
Oh, right.
About Valium, baby.
Yeah, like I
For
said,
all you kids out there.
they were discovering that, hey, we've got this talent. They've studied so much music together. I mean, when I read Keith Richards' book, he talks about how him and Mick Jagger had always had albums, and they would sit around, they would listen to just so much music. They took so much in. It's kind of like they've graduated now. They've done all their studying. You know, this is their thesis, and now they're going to build from that and go forward.
The other thing you mentioned was Zeppelin was Page during the producing, and nobody questioning him after Led Zeppelin 4. But that's another criticism of this album, is it sometimes there's some really odd, I don't know if they were deliberate choices or if it was just bad production, but there are some odd moments on this, and the one I noted was song High and Dry. Fairly straightforward blues tune, but for some reason the hi-hat is the loudest thing on the track, which I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you don't you don't generally hear the hi-hat as the lead instrument in the band.
No, you don't. And this is
normally.
actually before Glenn John starts working with them.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is another feature with the Stones down the road where they're getting better production and better engineering. But let's also keep in mind this was, 1966? 65 when they recorded
I think
this.
that's right, yeah.
So, yeah.
House of the Holy?
No. Aftermath.
No, Aftermath.
Aftermath. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so we ready to vote?
I think so.
Yeah.
I've set us up randomly to vote in the rounds. So if there's a third person that can sway the vote one way or the other, it could make it interesting or not. So in this one, I'm first, and I'm gonna go with Led Zeppelin. Scott, you're next.
I'm giving it to Zeppelin.
And Dave.
Not that it matters, but I would have gone with Zeppelin too.
Okay.
Because, yeah.
No,
There will be no Arby's here.
Well, I think it's just, for me, it's what we just said about how the Rolling Stone is still a little bit hit or miss, and the Zeppelin is a little all over the place, but it's just more, there's more quality there from track to track than on the Aftermath.
I think there's a lot more quality overall.
Yes. Well, one is a more mature band,
Right.
and one is a band finding their own.
Right.
Musical shenanigans! Do you like the music, lad?
Do you like podcasts?
Do you like expert analysis of music on podcasts?
Well, hey, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And here it is, Musical Shenanigans. Find us on your favorite podcast platform. So far, we've bribed Apple, Amazon, and iHeart, to name a few.
And we have compromising pictures of the others.
Also, find us on Twitter at @M_Shenanigan, because Kanye follows us. Okay, maybe he doesn't. Here we go into round 2. In one corner, proudly flying the rainbow flag, stands Elton John's 7th album, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, a harder-hitting album and a double one that showed off the musicianship of one Elton Hercules John, nee Reginald Kenneth Dwight, and Bernie Taupin's lyrics. In the other corner, under a bright yellow sign asking you to reduce your speed for slow children, is your friend and mine, Kanye, with the album Yeezus, where the listing of writers for each song exceeds in character length the Wikipedia summary. Do you smell that? Yep. That's a dumpster fire behind the Red Lobster on a Monday after Shrimp Fest weekend, burning brightly. And if you want to hear our extended discussions on these albums, check out Season 1, Episode 1, Please Don't, for Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and Season 1, Episode 4 for Yeezus.
I get
Jesus
jazzed about
Christ.
these ones that were on the very
Sorry.
first episode because I wasn't there, so it's actually my first opportunity to talk about some of these.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Dave. Hit it.
How many singles came off of this album? Benny and the Jets, Love Lies Bleeding, Candle in the Wind, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, Harmony. Just a really, it's a double album. Sometimes a double album can get a little bit much. I mean, we talked about George Harrison and his triple album, which was really a single album followed by 2 discs full of garbage. Not garbage, but not garbage, but not his peak stuff.
Jams.
Fluff.
They were jams.
This one, there's just a lot more top to bottom. This is a solid work top to bottom. I don't love every bit of it, but there's a lot there to love.
There's a lot of the songs that didn't get radio play that I felt were also very good. And maybe they did get some. It's one of those things where I either know the song because I listened to the album when I was young, or maybe I heard it on the radio. I can't differentiate, but like Gray Seal,
Yep.
Sweet Painted Lady, All the Girls Love Alice. It's probably from hearing it at a young age.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was from the album being played in my house or being on the radio.
I actually totally agree with you. As I was listening to this before to prep for the show, there were some of these tracks that I'm like, I've never heard this, but this is fucking awesome, and I would add them to a playlist and move on.
Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting is one of my favorite songs, and I did mention this on episode 1. So if you don't go back, yes, I'm lauding about it again. I think this would have been a great song to cover and play. It is just so much fun.
Yeah.
It would have been a great song to cover, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm totally on board. We got 2 other bandmates to convince on that one, but there's also some really bold choices on this
They'd
album.
be like, no, let's do Saturday Night's Okay for Fighting. Not all right, just okay.
Just okay.
Also some bold choices on this album. So like one of my favorites is Funeral for a Friend, which is actually the intro to another song called Love Lies Bleeding, but it is 6 full minutes of just sprawling instrumental, like almost overture of an opera kind of thing. Honestly,
it's rock opera.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's fantastic. And then when it goes into Love Lies Bleeding, which is a relatively straightforward 70s rock tune, just pairing those two things side by side with one another, that in itself was an interesting choice.
Very much like what Jeff Lynne was doing with ELO.
Yeah, very much.
Lyrically, Benny and the Jets is a little odd, but
I actually like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
It's one of those songs that's a product of its time. I don't know if it holds water today, but I do like it.
Satan and the Jets. Yeah.
I got to meet Bernie Taupin many years ago. I mean, Elton John was probably like 20 feet away behind a closed door, and I was getting introduced. It's like, well, it's not Elton, but it's the next best thing, and this is Bernie Taupin. And thankfully, I think I was like 18 or 19, I knew who he was. So I wasn't like some kid going, oh, who are you? I was like, no, man, you're the lyricist. So, yeah. Didn't get to meet Elton, but you know what? I was pleased to meet him. Very nice guy. And I mean, he does great work. I think that some of Elton's best work was with Bernie Taupin.
Yeah, I agree. I jotted down that Candle in the Wind was a big favorite of mine. It was this very lovely song that was about Marilyn Monroe, who Elton never met, never knew, was probably too young to have ever known, but writing about her very honestly, about not just in terms of her media image, but just how freaking horribly she was treated behind the scenes, ultimately leading to her death. When I say it was a favorite song, that was right up until 97 when Princess Diana was killed, and he decided he needed to go back and redo that song with new lyrics. We just talked about Aftermath. Keith Richards said that once called Elton John an old bitch whose writing is limited to writing songs about dead blondes.
Nice.
Keith,
thank you.
I'm going to come back to Keith a couple of times during this episode. They got some choice quotes throughout this episode. The other thing is, if you're a fan, if like Cory and I, you're a fan of the old show Mystery Science Theater, you have this song to thank. Because back to our discussion earlier about the album art, this was a double album. When you opened it up, the bifold interior, they had designed a little picture graphic for each song on the album. And then one song I've seen this movie too is a shot of like a big movie screen playing a Clark Gable movie, and then the silhouette rows of seats with 2 people watching down in the corner watching the movie. And it was Joel Hodgson who was sitting at home listening to the album, looking at the album art, and said, hey, that gives me an idea. And that's where you get Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I had to go look that up when I saw your note on it. I was like, oh my God, It is. So that was cool. All right, let's take some shots at this.
Bernie Taupin. I agree that the best Elton's best work was when he was partnering with Bernie Taupin, but occasionally that relationship did not work out, and when it worked, it could be pretty damn bad. There's a song on here called This Song Has No Title. Just is not good. And the other thing on this, Elton has this habit sometimes of cranking out. For every great song, there's one like terrible, simplistic, overwrought piece of emotional stuff that basically it's when he went through his Disney phase. There was a while there where every like Disney Pixar film had Elton John doing the soundtrack. You start to see moments.
King.
You start to see moments of that on this album, which I could have done without.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. Anything else?
That covers it, I think.
Kanye.
What is there not to say about Yeezus? I mean, come on. I guess someone had to do it.
Oh, this was...
It's carbon based. It was produced by a living, breathing individual. Yeah.
Yeah,
positives.
when I went back through this, I was like, this wasn't the first one I think I listened to when we did this before. I think I did the Black Dark Sexual Fantasy Chocolate or whatever the hell that thing was. This one was just, it was so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it was painful. It was like,
Yeah.
I'm skipping ahead. Like, most albums I'll listen to the entire song. I'll listen to the entire album. This one I'm like, I get partway through and I'm like, next. You can only take so much of it.
So this
was really...
So Kanye was another one of our 5 or more shows, right? And so we had to listen to a lot of Kanye to have that discussion.
I'm sorry, guys.
And it's all right. It's all right. It's growth. It's good for growth.
Brain damage is healthy.
Out of all the Kanye, when we did that show, I remember I opened up by saying Kanye is an asshole, but we're gonna try to be as objective as possible and truly just judge the music on its own merits. Of the Kanye albums, so I'm trying to be objective here. Of the Kanye albums we listened to, this is probably my favorite of them. There's a lot of experimentation here. I jotted down in my notes, kind of hip hop meets industrial. It's really, I mean, you mentioned that Kanye has a lot of collaborating artists. I don't think this happened, but you could almost hear like the influence of Trent Reznor in the background a little bit here on some of this stuff. He's very eclectic. He's definitely trying new things. On the song Guilt Trip, I noticed there's a sample of the synth from Fly Like an Eagle by Steve Miller, which was an interesting choice. So I give him, kind of back to the Zeppelin conversation, I give him credit for trying things. You know what I mean? Once again, he was already making a bundle of money. He could have made the same album again and again and again, and he chose not to do that. He chose to try something different. So credit where due.
Yeah, but credit where due is like saying, I went to Arby's and I shit on the manager's desk, and
and you take credit for that,
and you take credit for that, yeah. And
no, that's my corn.
You deserve credit for getting all your fiber. That's very positive.
Yeah, or maybe if you don't get enough fiber, you just put out a bunch of dried logs or something. I don't know, but that's how it feels. And, I mean, you talk about a dumpster fire, and I think it's more of an Arby's, behind the Arby's, than it is behind the Red Lobster at this point.
Oh, I was trying to say it was a Red Lobster after like they had like Shrimp Fest all weekend, and it's a dumpster fire on a Monday morning loaded with like rotting seafood parts
and logs
and
then you put Kanye on top of that, and you gotta oh boy, and
now it's a dessert.
now it's dessert, and it's a dessert no one will ever want.
It's like a Stuckey's pecan log.
The Stuckey's. Oh, Stuckey's. I love Stuckey's. Oh, yes, Stuckey's. Everybody goes for the pecan log. Stuckey's.
So testament, though, to the point that I'm making, there are apparently, even among people who love Kanye, this is his most polarizing album. There are a lot of hardcore Kanye fans, actually, who do not like this album, which, to me, if the goal is you're trying to push the envelope and try something new, if half your fans love it and half your fans hate it, that suggests to me you're doing something right.
Fair enough.
I'll grant you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's take some shots at it.
Oh. Do we have to?
Didn't we just? We just did.
Look, it's the same.
Like
it's the same commentary we had about the Kanye album we talked about last week. Musically, it's kind of interesting at points. He should just shut the fuck up. He's not a rapper. He's a producer.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is the kind of thing you buy, you hang up on your door, and you literally shoot it at a distance with your shotgun or your BB gun or your Nerf gun or whatever the fuck, or or you shoot shit balls at it from your ass. I don't know. I mean, you do things that are horrible. You make I don't know. You take your poop and you freeze it and you make poop cubes and you shoot it at it. Whatever. Y'all are just like, wow, okay, he needs to shut up.
And
he's always so egotistical.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but again, I know what you're saying. So that's part of that.
That's rapper
Right,
swagger.
part of that is what I mentioned earlier, which is we're trying to judge the album, not the person. But it's a big factor in this album because there's like a lot of moments in this album where he's just beating his own chest throughout the entire song.
He calls himself the title of the album. He calls himself
Yes.
Yeezus. So
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
I'm saying here it's actually
Yeah.
fair to make that point within the context of the album.
Yeah, here it's the whole thing's a testament to
Yep.
his ego.
Yeah, John Lennon's calling from the dead and going, dude, I tried this once.
The Beatles are bigger than Yeezus.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can...
You know what? I'm
go on
going
to our
to
voting.
make an editorial decision here. Let's just skip it. We know how we're going with this one. I've already updated the spreadsheet. It's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
Okay,
Well,
good.
we don't need
yeah.
to vote? Okay.
Yeah. And the votes were all just, he's like, no, I won fair and square, bitches. No, it was stolen from me.
I think
You
we've
gotta
already
seize
tipped
the-
our hand on this one about 10 minutes ago.
I don't know, but if we don't vote, he can claim he won.
That's true. It's true.
I won through a no vote.
I vote for Yellow Brick Road.
I second that.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Dave's over there going, damn.
I thought we
All
were
right, let's
unanimous
move
for
on.
Kanye. Update the spreadsheet again.
Wouldn't that be funny?
Oh, I clicked on the wrong column. Oops.
Damn it. How did Kanye not win?
Hi there, and welcome to the middle part. Usually this is the part where everybody talks about something or we have a funny bit, but not this time. But what I do have is, if you're enjoying the show and you kind of like what we do, I'm going to recommend a few musical-related books for you real quick. Just a little summer reading list, you could call it. All right, from the top, Sound Man by Glenn Johns. You've heard me mention him often. He is the engineer with the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones. Next, Far and Wide, Bring That Horizon to Me. This is Neil Peart's book, his last one that he wrote, concerning his journeys and when he's on tour for the Rush 40 show that went on, that last final tour they did. Life by Keith Richards. I've mentioned this book numerous times. Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. I highly recommend the audiobook because he reads it. Get Tusked, the inside story of Fleetwood Mac's most anticipated album by Ken Calais and Hernan Rojas. This is a really good book about the making of the album Tusk. Strange Things Happen, A Life with the Police, Polo and Pygmies by Stuart Copeland. Unfaithful Music and Disappearing Ink by Elvis Costello. Reckless, My Life as a Pretender by Chrissy Hine. All of these are great reads. I highly recommend them. Now, so there you go, folks. Little summer reading list with a musical theme. Enjoy. And now back to the show. In our next round, we have Bob Dylan's John Wesley Harding, an album reportedly done just after he did the Basement Tapes with the band that we discussed in the last show. A typical Bob Dylan album in the middle of psychedelia hysteria where Bob was going to continue to just be Bob. In the other,
Corner. Yeah.
in the other corner is the juggernaut of an album, Revolver by the Beatles, where the transition from poppy, lovey-dovey Beatlemania songs were starting to get more real and creative. A precursor, if you will, to the upcoming Sgt. Pepper's. We explored John Wesley Harding in depth back on Season 1, Episode 5,
you loved every minute
and
of it.
Revolver. What's
We
that?
explored John Wesley Harding in depth, and he loved every minute of it.
He did. He loved it. We were good and we were thorough. And we discussed Revolver back on Season 1, Episode 4. And so let's start with Dylan.
Yeah.
Well, the title alone, John Wesley Harding, was about a very hard man.
Not a real guy.
Yes.
Actual guy. John Wesley Harding was a real guy.
Yeah, but he used to say Alice.
He was a cheater.
Look, he was born in the 19th century. Everybody gets to a certain age.
They say.
Exactly. There used to be a time when old white guys just had to deal with
Exactly.
a
He
weak penis.
used to block and tackle back in our day, boy.
we use waterproof tape and popsicle sticks.
That's what an erector set's for.
It really helped if you were a shower, not a grower.
So interesting thing about Dylan. Dylan is, I mean, this is another guy from those early shows with 5 or more. Dylan is a guy probably, I don't know if I can think of another who knows as much about music as anybody else. And what I mean by that is not even necessarily the writing and performing and recording part of it, but he has this encyclopedic knowledge of music history just generally. I mean, he used to do a show on Sirius XM where he'd just play all kinds of obscure shit, and he could just talk forever off the top of his head about all these various facts and points about how music evolved. Because of that, a lot of people think of Dylan and they think, oh, folk singer guy. But the reality is he's done rock. He's currently in a mode, or recently in a mode where he's done like a lot of old 40s standards, like jazz standards. Dylan even has a Christmas album. If you want to hear that, that's absolutely horrific. But this is another example of that. Here, he almost went with purely a total country and western phase, and it's this Dylan. It's right on brand for him because basically his attitude has always been, whatever you think I am, I'm going to do something different the next time to prove you wrong.
Yeah, you almost forgot his death metal album too. It's very few have heard it.
Yeah, true.
Did he get Frank's oboist
I
to
think
play
he
with
got
him?
the psychic oboist to back him on that. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
bloodlust on the tracks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Fuck yes. There you go. All along the watchtower.
Yeah. So we do get All Along the Watchtower from this, and
that means we also get the Hendrix version.
Yes.
Exactly, because, and we did mention this back before, but Hendrix was a huge fan of Dylan. And I mean, I only learned this in I think the past 5 years, and blown away, because I always wonder why he did All Along the Watchtower. Just thought, he just heard the song, thought it was cool. It's like, no, he loved Dylan. Absolutely loved him.
Well, Dylan was a very good writer, and as far as this album goes, it's like lyrically, it's outstanding. However, musically, it's so stripped down that it's painful, as Dave points out. With that fucking harmonica.
It's a very stripped down sound. I mean, it's basically just guitar and harmonica over and over and over again. And not even well balanced guitar and harmonica.
That's the point
it's
where
harmonica right into the mic.
It's the point where you realize that Neil Young needs to be thrown off the bridge and sodomized all the way down for that too.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it was I liked the Dylan when we did it, but it was too much Dylan at once. Dylan is something to take in moderation.
Well, I was definitely defending Dylan when we did that show, but out of all the Dylan albums we listened to from the Rolling Stone list, this was probably at the bottom of my list, honestly.
Agreed.
If there was somebody who was skeptical of Dylan and I was trying to get them into giving Dylan a shot, this is not the album I would hand them.
You don't send them here. No, you're right. I mean, a lot of it was just that repetitive sound, and I mean, I give him credit that everybody else is starting to do the whole psychedelic thing, and everyone's dropping LSD, but Bob's just gonna do what
Bob's
he does
gonna do
best.
Bob. Yeah.
Yep, he's gonna tell you a story, and how this man can keep all these lyrics in his head. I'm sure it's an exercise in fighting dementia by just remembering his songs every day. It's mental exercise. And I think we can move on now to Revolver.
Yeah. So speaking of the psychedelia that was going on at the moment, this is like the Beatles kind of starting to settle into their heavily experimental phase as well.
This and Rubber Soul, I rank high up as a couple of my favorites of theirs. I think it's more of the transition from the Beatlemania to what they would eventually do. I mean, picking favorite Beatles albums like picking favorite children sometimes, but definitely, I mean, this one, we mentioned the LSD, but I felt like they were able to harness it better. They weren't doing these trippy 12-minute songs or trying to guide you through some acid trip like you're Virgil going into hell or anything. I don't know. I felt like they were able to pick up on it, but still use it appropriately. Because I don't think any of the songs are over 3.5 minutes. I think they were still sticking to that format.
I'm so glad they stayed in that format for this, because it would have been easy to go overboard And even today, it's almost painful to listen to something beyond 3.5 minutes.
Unless it's
really,
good.
Really good. Yes, I agree.
There are some songs that will go on for 8 minutes, and you may not even notice
that's
it.
Rare.
Well, these days, yes.
But I notice more and more of it happening too. These days, these artists are experimenting. They're putting crap out, and you're just like, wow, that's just not your best work, man.
Yeah.
Someone should have cut out
Yeah,
the
no
third
shit.
solo.
Too much noodling.
The Beatles were total innovators. This is one of these early albums where they're just starting to say, hey, wait a minute. We got all this equipment in the studio we can play around with. We don't just have to stand in front of mics and play our guitars for 3.5 minutes.
Right.
And so you start experimenting with a lot more tape echoes. There's one song where they run, Lennon's vocals through a Leslie cabinet speaker, which is a whole thing, but it basically gives you this sort of warbly tremolo sound. And Cory, I agree with you. I mean, everybody points to Sgt. Pepper's as the height of their invention and experimentation. I would much rather sit down and listen to Revolver than Sgt. Pepper's, to be honest. And Sgt. Pepper's is great. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think this is the better album.
I think this is too.
I would say that. Now, Revolver is what inspired Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like he heard Revolver from underwater. Okay, that's how Brian Jones heard things. Was like he heard him. Or
Brian Wilson.
Whatever. Wilson,
Brian
Jones, BJ, whatever.
Jones. Yeah.
It's the same thing. Fuck Pat Sounds.
So all right, so obviously we like it. So like, what don't we like about this? And I don't know who.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think we all agree Yellow Submarine is not a high point.
I like it,
but
it's not bad.
But
I mean, it's the only negative I could possibly pull out, and yet I still love that song.
I like the song. What the hell,
I don't care for the song per se, but I will say this: as I was listening to it again, this is another great example of them using the studio. Like, they've got these like sort of echoes, and the voices in the background sound like they're coming over like a radio on a submarine, and
right.
They've got bells going off, and so it's very interesting to me from that perspective. But no, I don't love the song. But the point is the fact that we're sitting here even debating over Yellow Submarine shows that there's not a lot to criticize here.
That's true. Yeah,
right.
It's a very pioneering album overall, and
yes,
just so creative.
It is.
So this is. I think this is probably going to be a no-brainer because we have what we all agree is Dylan's worst output up against what we believe is the Beatles' best output.
Yeah.
But whatever. I guess we can go ahead and vote and make it official.
Not that it matters.
Revolver.
But
Yeah, Revolver.
and I go.
And
with
we put
Revolver,
holes
too.
in John Wesley Harding. Oh, more than the
Too soon.
More
Too soon.
More than the two that he had already. I didn't say it. What?
I wasn't gonna make any comment.
You were thinking.
I thought you were making
No.
I thought you were making a bullet hole reference. I really did.
Yeah, Dave, it was a bullet hole reference.
Well, because it was the whole Old West, and
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey everybody, this is Dave, and I just want to take a quick minute to thank you all for listening. We have a lot of fun making this show for you, and we hope you're enjoying what you hear. And if you are enjoying the show, why not take a minute to subscribe? All you have to do is just search for Musical Shenanigans on your favorite podcast app. We're on all of them, like iHeartRadio, Amazon, Apple, Spotify. Once you find us, you just tap that little subscribe button. You never ever have to worry about missing an episode again. It'll be right there on your phone when it comes out. Also, we'd love it if you tell your friends about us. In fact, if you're with a friend right now, next time they get up to leave the room, you know what? Just grab their phone and subscribe them as well. I'm sure they'll thank you for it. And as always, we always love your feedback. You can always drop us a review on your favorite podcast platform, or you can tweet at us at @m_shenanigan. Please let us know what you think. We'd love to hear it. All right, that's enough shameless plugging. Again, thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
Moving on.
In this round, we have scaled down Bruce Springsteen's album Nebraska, a rather Dylan-esque album without the E Street Band, weaving his raw sound around the storytelling he does best. Bruce faces off the godfathers of metal, Black Sabbath, with their second album Paranoid, sporting guitar riffs that middle school boys and Beavis and Butthead can easily sing along.
Fire! That fucking rocks.
You can hear our extended thoughts on these albums by going back to Season 1, Episode 5 for Nebraska, or Season 1, Episode 6 for
Those
Paranoid.
guys are cool.
And let's start with Nebraska. Scott, do you have anything?
What now?
Scott just.
What?
Oh, he.
No,
What?
go ahead, Dave.
Who? What? No, I didn't. No, you cut out.
Oh,
I
Nebraska.
think we lost Scott
Go.
there for a second.
Anything?
I'm here.
Scott, would you like to start about Nebraska? Was the question before you lost your signal?
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
There's a lot of thought
Dave,
behind that.
would you like to start?
All right, so I do love this album. Springsteen, you mentioned Dylan-esque, and I think we talked about this at the time. The one thing Springsteen and Dylan had in common is that they were both great lyrics writers and storytellers. Springsteen, a little bit more accessible than Dylan. Sometimes a little hard to get your arms around what the hell Dylan is trying to say. So Springsteen is a little bit more straightforward, but this is, in my view, some of his best storytelling that he's done. There's points of it where it's almost more like you're reading a novel than listening to a song, right? He's trying to get into characters' heads. He's not, although there's some dark stories here. This is a lot of these songs. I mean, the title track is actually about a real serial killer who went out and just slaughtered a bunch of people for no real reason. But interestingly, he's telling their stories and trying to understand them, have you relate to them rather than telling their stories with any kind of judgment. So even where it's dark, it's not like these are bad people. These are just people that are going through some shit.
You put it best when you said, the sparse instrumentation makes these tracks come off as very intimate and sincere, and they do. The rawness of it, it's incredible storytelling that just enwraps you from the moment he starts.
Yep.
And it's the way he's singing it, it's his voice, it's even just the gravelly rawness of just him with a 4-track.
Yeah.
The demos are essentially what became the album.
Yes.
These were things he was just recording and kicking around, and they just went from one straight to production.
Yeah, he was coming off a tour. He was basically checked into a hotel just to get some R&R after a lengthy tour, but he still wanted to take some time and do some writing, so he asked one of his assistants to go out and buy a tape recorder, and the assistant comes back with one of the first, I can't remember the model, but it was one of the first, I don't know. But anyway, it was the first multi-track recorder to use just a regular cassette, like you would pop into an 80s cassette player.
Oh, I believe that was a Fostex.
Possibly.
It could have been.
So he sits down and he puts these songs together, and they're all really meant to be demos. The intent was, you mentioned there was no E Street Band here. The intent was always to go back in the studio and redo these songs with the full band. And they tried a few of them, and they found that it was just coming out worse than the original demos, that the original demos just worked better. So they largely put them out without much post-production at all.
Brilliant album. I think it's even some of his absolute best writing, just dark and grim, and it's like, oh, it's not that poppy fuckface from Jersey or whatever. It's like, okay, if you know what I mean. If you know what I mean.
And when we talked about Burn in the USA last time, one of the things I said was there's some dark moments on that album too, but they didn't get as much attention because the songs are so much more upbeat and danceable.
Right.
Here, there's no attempt to hide it.
Yes.
That doesn't bother me. I actually view that as a plus, but it is one criticism I've heard other people say, that it's so dark that it's a little off-putting for some people.
I think it's great that way. It needed to be. It should, and Bruce is such a great writer too, because he writes for so many other people, and a lot of people don't realize that. And he, even as a player, as a musician, everything else, I think this showcases him better.
Agreed.
It does. People have gone on and created short stories or books
really?
based on the characters
Really?
from these songs. Wow. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so let's move on to Sabbath and Paranoid.
Hell yeah.
All right, Scott, why don't you start with this one?
What's there to say? The whole album is fantastic. Okay, not the whole album, because Planet Caravan makes me want to, pull my gonads over things that shouldn't be pulled over. And there's a lot of fluffy riffing on this, but there's some great riffs on it too. War Pigs, Iron Man, Paranoid. Hell yeah, boy, yeah. It's just the start of metal in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, like I called them the Godfathers here.
Absolutely.
I think everybody looks to this as the blueprints for metal and
riff lords.
Exactly. Yeah.
You hear that riff, da 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 da, and you know immediately what it is. And,
almost all of these songs revolved around Tommy Iommi's just incredible knack for coming up with a really interesting guitar.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't know, and I don't I don't know, maybe people don't know this, but Tommy Iommi was actually missing the fingertips onto his hand.
It's Tony Iommi.
Oh, am I saying? Oh, okay, sorry.
No,
Tommy Iommi.
no, it's written in here as Tommy.
Sorry.
This time you did it, Dave.
I did. Apologies
But you know what? That's my fault because I've called him Tommy too many times.
to Mr.
It's
Iommi.
still going to be Tony, not Tommy. His lesser known brother.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was missing. I was speculating. I don't know whether this is true, but I honestly think there's a chance that some of his ability to come up with really interesting riffs was because he was somewhat limited because he was missing fingertips on multiple fingers. And when he was a teenager, he was working in a sheet metal factory and making music on the side and playing guitar when he could find time to do it. And literally, like, this is just Murphy's Law. He had given his notice. His last day of work there was when he lost the fingers.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got
these weird little prosthetics. You can see in a lot of pictures if you look close, and hey man, the guy's a legend.
But it's got to be. But I mean, as a guitar player, it's got to be somewhat limiting, and I think it maybe is why he was so inspired to come up with things that sound interesting within the confines of what he was able to do physically.
Well, I think it certainly gives him his own sound too. And but yeah, there's a lot of fluff on here. He goes off on a bunch of whole bluesy tangents and jazzy tangents, and it's like, dude, pick a genre, please. Just stop. God.
Yeah, I'm going to be the outlier here. I think I said it at the time. I'll say it again. I actually like Planet Caravan, but that's just me. Once again, sort of like an early Floydian feel, kind of like we talked about with No Quarter.
Yeah, it's kick me off that bridge and just do it all the way down into the water, down, down they go, down they go. Anyway.
The interesting thing about Planet Caravan, and I understand why people don't like it. It is not what most people think of. If I said the words Black Sabbath to you, you are not going to picture something like Planet Caravan in your head. But at the same time, kind of a testament to how versatile they were, and they're not just what you think of immediately.
Right. I love the music on Caravan. I hated the vocals. I hated the fucking vocals on that song.
Oh, you know what? Interestingly, we just talked about Revolver. Once again, Ozzy singing through a Leslie speaker. Same thing that Lennon did on Revolver.
Leslie speakers, incidentally, are the ones that rotate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can set them at different speeds.
It's kind of like everybody has done this, where you put your hand over your mouth and wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
That's basically what a Leslie speaker does.
Exactly.
When it works, it's great. And when it doesn't, it's,
exactly. Then you get turds like Planet Caravan. Yeah. So.
My biggest criticism of this album is the lyrics. Geezer tried, but honestly, on almost all of these songs, in my view, the lyrics are kind of like teenage boy trying to write something really deep and profound, but it's just a teenage boy writing bad
Split
poetry.
it with my woman because she couldn't help me with my mind. People think I'm insane because I'm not, because I am frowning all the time. Yeah, no kidding.
Well, we said it earlier on. In War Pigs, he rhymed the word masses with the word masses.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Now, Iron Man is a great story. However, I'm going to think that 80% of the world think it's based on the Marvel character.
Right.
But Iron Man's another great example. Like, I like the story.
Yeah.
I like sort of the concept behind the song. The lyrics get a little stupid.
They do. Kill the people he once saved. Yay. Gosh, hey, Bob, let's go kill the people. Anyway.
Okay, so this brings us to our voting now. And I will go first. I am going to pick Nebraska. Dave?
Yeah, I'm always a sucker for good lyrics, so I got to go with Springsteen because we just talked about that's a low point on the Sabbath album.
Fuck y'all to death all the way down off the bridge.
So is that a vote for Sabbath
Paranoid.
then,
Yeah,
Scott?
fuck y'all.
All right.
Okay, all right. Hey,
Still lose, but that's fine.
Fuck you. Yep.
yeah.
Sodomy
No,
all the way down.
Big...
No lube. No
Is there squealing?
lube.
Is there squealing
You
involved
may squeal
too?
all you like.
And here ends another segment of the wild card extravaganza. See you at the bottom of the bridge. Scott, take us out.
Take a rainbow, wrap it up in a sigh, soak it in the sun and make a grocery boy cry. Oh, the the Candyman. The Candyman can. The Candyman can. Because he mixes it with love and makes the world taste good. The Candyman makes everything he makes satisfying and delicious. Now you talk about good childhood wishes, and even you want to eat the fucking dishes. You can take it tomorrow and stuff it in your dream, and he'll kill you, and then eat your eyes out like a little bastard that you know you are. Hi.